In the last 200 years, the number of people on Earth that have learned to read and write during their lifetime has gone from 15% in the year 1800 to 85% today. That's an amazing testament to our species' capacity for cultural change and to the impact of schooling on our modern world. Now, I'm a part of an international network of researchers and teachers who believe that we could make similar progress in just the next decades in regards to a new form of literacy, beyond reading and writing. We believe that schools could help students develop a deeper scientific understanding of the human condition, one that is of practical value for individuals, communities, and the world at large. Of course, I'll explain how and why we should do that, but for right now, I'd like to bring your attention to the present moment. Here I am speaking to you. Here you are listening to me. And as I'm speaking, as you're listening, you may also be thinking. You might be thinking about whether or not you agree with me so far. Let's hope so far so good. You might also be thinking something else. You might be thinking about how comfortable or uncomfortable your seat is. You might be thinking about whether your lunch is still agreeing with your stomach. Or your mind might be really quite somewhere else. You might be fantasizing or fretting about some far-off future scenario that may or may not happen. You might be thinking about what you're going to do on the weekend or where you might be in a decade from now. Or you might be reliving, reimagining some past incident from your life, good or bad. All of these are examples of the most everyday of human experience. We are thinking, feeling, speaking, imaginative, social creatures. Human behavior is at the center of our everyday experience, and ultimately it shapes our lives and the world around us. But I'd like to suggest something a bit further today. I'd like to suggest that human behavior can also be at the center of education, an organizing principle for curriculum and schooling. So, to understand that, we need to look a little bit at the science of human behavior and a little bit at the structure of education. Where I work, at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology, right here in Leipzig, we're developing a truly interdisciplinary understanding of the human condition, of humans as a species. At our institute, we have psychologists, evolutionary biologists, archaeologists, anthropologists, geneticists, economists, computer scientists, and many more, all working together and with researchers around the world to unlock the big questions about where did humans come from and how diverse are we as a species. It's a very difficult job. For every insight that gets produced, many more questions emerge. And in the science of human behavior, there are many disagreements, but I'd like to share with you just 3 simple truths that most of us can agree on. So human behavior is at the center of our evolutionary history. Human behavior, especially cooperative social behaviors, have been driving our evolution for millions of years, generation after generation, at least since our last common ancestor with chimpanzees and bonobos. It's been small variations in our social temperament and our curious interest in those around us that has shaped who we've become, our minds and cultures, over the millennia. Just think about this event. We're here sharing ideas that may have value to us personally and perhaps for the planet as a whole. And just imagine for a moment if this room was filled not with humans but with chimpanzees. The chaos that would be happening is unimaginable. It's our ability to work together and learn together, to share ideas that none of us could come up with alone, that makes us who we are. It's the hallmark of humanity, and it's been the secret of our success for millennia. When we look at our development over our lifetimes, again, we see that human behavior is at the center of the process. It's the behaviors of those around us that wind up shaping who we are from infancy to adulthood. And that's precisely because of our long history, our long evolutionary history as a social species. And finally, when it comes to the big global challenges that we're facing as a global collective, Again, we see that human behavior is at the center of the process. It's a key determinant of what's going to happen to our planet. We have this long evolutionary history as a social species working to solve the challenges that we collectively face, but that history doesn't guarantee that we're in a good spot right now to address this global scale of social dilemma. What we do today, collectively, matters deeply for if and how we will survive as a species. So, when we take these simple truths together, we can see that human behavior is central to our everyday experience. It's central to who we are as a species over evolutionary time, and it's central to where we're headed in terms of planetary sustainability. But again, I'm arguing something a bit further. I'm suggesting that human behavior can be a central organizing concept for curriculum and school design. So let's look a little bit about where is human behavior in the school curriculum. Let's imagine the average school curriculum as an island, an archipelago of islands. We've got the island of history, ethics, economics, civics, geography, the arts, biology, and more. Each island has its own language, its own norms, its own ways of understanding the world. Now, sometimes individual students and teachers may get skilled at traversing between some of these islands. We call that interdisciplinary teaching and learning, and that's a good thing. But too often, schools and eventually higher education, universities, tend to reward specialization rather than cross-island diplomacy. And we think that's a problem. It means that what you learn in economics class about human behavior, about what makes humans tick, may be different than what you learn in the ethics classroom or in the biology classroom. And this is problematic because scientific research continues to show that the mental models we develop about the human condition, about human behavior, about what makes us tick, these mental models about who we are as a species actually impact how we relate to ourselves and how we relate to those around us. So let me give you just a few examples from this research. When it comes to self-interest, it turns out, it seems, if people learn that humans are fundamentally self-interested creatures, this may in fact increase their tendency to behave in self-interested or selfish ways. When it comes to intelligence, it turns out that often if people learn that intelligence is something fixed at birth, set in stone, unchangeable, that they may challenge themselves less, they may learn less, they may cultivate their potential intelligence less over their lifetime. And when it comes to emotions, if people learn that our thoughts and emotions are something that must be controlled, it turns out that our thoughts and emotions may begin to control us. And finally, when it comes to happiness, it seems that if humans develop an understanding that happiness comes from purchasing more products, from attaining more wealth, getting more social media clicks and likes, getting more external rewards, we may end up less happy and more lonely. So it's these mental models that we create around concepts such as these that really drive how we relate to each other and how we relate to ourselves. In fact, scientists are beginning to think that it's inadequate ideas about the human condition as it relates to concepts like these that are really at the foundation of some of the world's biggest problems that we face. So we can begin to see that this map of the curriculum is not really adequate to the challenges of our times. In fact, I want to suggest that this map is wholly out of date, that the tides have shifted and a new landmass has emerged from the oceans of human knowledge. This is the island of understanding the human condition. It's accessible from all the traditional hubs of human knowledge, but here on this new landscape, there's an interdisciplinary party of ideas about where humans came from and also where we're headed. This is the terrain that I've been exploring for the last 5+ years with researchers and educators around the world. And we're trying to think about how can we help schools, teachers, and students also engage with this 21st century science of human behavior. And in doing so, we've tried to develop a theory of how we can get better at teaching in this way. So based on those simple truths that I just described, what we've begun to recommend is that schools can focus centrally on helping students to reflect on the everyday experience of human behavior in the light of evolution on one side and sustainable development on the other. It means that schools can centrally help students ask big questions about where did our behavior come from? How is it connecting to the things that I care about? And how are we working together to advance the things that we care about in the world today? This simple design concept or theory for education has been pretty productive. We've developed a whole range of teaching materials. We've developed teaching materials that help students compare and contrast the similarities and differences between human and non-human primates in relation to those characteristics that make us most human. We've developed interactive computer simulations that help students learn principles of ecology, evolution, human behavior, and sustainability science all at the same time. And we've even begun to develop methods to help students understand the biological origins and cultural evolution of those things closest to their everyday lives, things like music and even school itself. So these lessons, we think, help students to build bridges, connect the dots across these disciplinary islands, and we think that's a good thing. But as we try to implement it, we see that schools present a challenging environment. Many schools don't have the policies, practices, and perspectives needed to really engage with this 21st century science that I'm talking about. So let me conclude with a vision for a future curriculum, a curriculum in which human behavior is at the center as an organizing principle, and one that we think might be more adequate for the challenges of our times. Let me outline just 5 simple elements of this future curriculum. First, school purpose. Imagine an education system in which students viewed school not as an institution imposing requirements on them from the outside, but as places to clarify, construct, and evolve their own strategies, their own purposes for living, learning, and thriving in this 21st century that we find ourselves in. Social emotional learning. Imagine an education system in which even the youngest students were empowered to understand their thoughts and emotions, to understand the role of human connection in social well-being, and to understand the tools of creating healthy relationships and healthy school cultures. Interdisciplinary learning. Imagine an education system in which the big ideas and core concepts of the human experience is an organizing principle for learning across the subject areas, in which students are primarily accountable for documenting and demonstrating their own evolving conceptions of who we are as a species in ways that are scientifically adequate and practically valuable for global sustainability. Community science. Imagine an education system in which students, together with teachers, community partners, and scientists, are engaged in understanding, investigating, and improving their own school culture and the relationship of their school with the broader local and global community. And finally, youth-led global networking. Imagine an education system in which students around the world were able to connect in real and virtual environments around the important work of school improvement and sustainable community development that they're involved in leading locally. Now, importantly, all of those elements are not particularly new. Many schools, including right here at the Leipzig International School, have great leadership in areas like social emotional well-being, interdisciplinary, and community-based learning. What we're suggesting is unique about our perspective here is the coherence of the single design concept, the idea of reflecting on the everyday experience of human behavior in the light of evolution and sustainability can provide a unifying concept for helping students to develop an integrated understanding of who we are as a species across deep scales of time and space, from our ancient to not so ancient ancestors, to our experience of the immediate here and now, to the big global challenges that we face as a planet, to the unknown future. By helping students develop this more integrated understanding of who we are and where we're going, we think that students can become directors of their own learning, and in this way, they might be able to better influence the shape of their own lives, of their schools and communities, and the world around us. Thank you.